Buonasera a tutti. Vi chiederete perché non sia partita la sigla, semplicemente perché non ci sono riuscito. Dopo un po' di tempo si perde l'abitudine a fare molte cose e quindi in questo momento siamo partiti direttamente senza far partire la sigla e direttamente con il nostro ospite, direttamente da Teheran, il professor Hamidreza Gholamzadeh, che noi ringraziamo, che ha un vasto curriculum di studi internazionali, PhD conseguito anche negli Stati Uniti, e a cui diamo il benvenuto. Welcome, Dr. Hamidreza Gholamzadeh.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join your program.
So now we start to conversation, and we have some question. I put on more or less 8 questions, big questions, and then I translate it. Allora, questa trasmissione, come capite, sarà principalmente in inglese, ma io porrò prima una domanda in italiano, poi la tradurrò appunto per il nostro ospite e poi tradurrò la sua traduzione. Io volevo chiedere al professore qual è attualmente la situazione in Iran e a Teheran in modo particolare durante questi giorni, quando si parla di un imminente attacco da parte degli Stati Uniti. Dr. Gholamzadeh, how is the situation now in Iran? Here in Europe, media are talking about an imminent attack by the USA, but in the streets, in the common people, and then in the university, in research, and for the expert analysis, which is the situation? What do you think about it?
The situation here in Iran is normal. Life is going on. People are going to their works. Students go to the universities for exams, and schools are open. Businesses are almost open, and everything is almost normal. And this almost doesn't mean because of the threats of the United States. It's actually because of the protest and the bad economy that we were facing a couple of weeks ago. But the threats from the United States is not changing the lives of people, because for the past more than 4 decades, for almost 47 years now, we have been under sanctions, we have been under threats from the United States, and we have been under, let's say, coups and all the plots that the Americans had against Iran. So we are almost familiar with these threats and situation, and it doesn't change our lives. So I think I should stop for your translation.
Yeah, thank you. Allora il professore dice che in realtà non c'è una situazione che non sia normale, nel senso che la gente va normalmente all'università, va al lavoro e fa la sua vita di sempre nonostante questa minaccia degli Stati Uniti. D'altra parte il professore dice sono 47 anni che noi viviamo in un regime di profondo accerchiamento, con le sanzioni, con le minacce, con tutto quello che sappiamo. Quindi questa situazione piuttosto è stata influenzata da quanto è avvenuto nelle scorse settimane, con le dimostrazioni, con le manifestazioni, con quello che è successo, relative soprattutto alla situazione economica. Quindi adesso passerei alla seconda domanda, cioè che è proprio relativa a questa situazione. Dr. Gholamzadeh, today the guide talk about a coup. He said last weeks they try a coup against the Islamic Republic, and there were thousands of deaths, and they all start with demonstration, as you said, for economic troubles. And at the beginning, I remember that President Pezeshkian and then the guide Khamenei too, they said people have the right to demonstrate because we have a lot of problems. But then happened something else. And even the Mossad said we have our people in there. So Could you explain us what really happened?
Sure. Let's begin from the last days of December. On final days of December, we had some protests across especially Tehran, and it was for economy. Some businesses closed their shops. They came to streets. They called on the government to do something for the bad economy, a sharp drop in currency value against US dollar, and the unpredictable situation of economy. That was their demand, that it needs to be fixed. That was all. They came to streets, they chanted, they made their statement, and then they get back to their shops, their homes, whatever. And there was no conflict in that. It continued in the early days of January as well. So we had some few days of these very peaceful protests that happened in different cities, in different parts of Tehran, in Grand Bazaar, and in different places. We had no security challenges, we had no violence, and there was no oppression or such things. That was all. But then what happened was that we had a call for demonstration by dissident Prince Pahlavi, who is the son of the Shah, who was collapsed actually by the Islamic revolution. And he asked people to go to the streets to try to topple the regime. That was the call by Pahlavi and other groups also. And it was supported by the Americans as well. So the call was for Thursday, January 8th. And people went to the streets. The estimation is that we had, I think, 300,000 to 400,000 people across the country in different cities went to the streets. And though it was a demonstration, for most of them, it was for bad economy, protest against the economy. For some of them, it was pro-Pahlavi. And here in between, there remain some people who we can say were well-organized, well-trained terrorists, which were supported by the Israelis, by the Americans, and by terrorist groups outside Iran, like MKO, Mujahideen Khalq organization. And how we can say that? Because as you mentioned, Israelis posted something on Twitter, for example, and claimed that they have people on the ground. MKO, the terrorist group, announced the names of their members who were killed on the streets of Iran. And we have the President Trump supporting the rioters. So all in all, what happened on Thursday night was that at the beginning, the protest was very calm and peaceful. People went to streets. They began with chanting against the bad economy, and that was all very fine. But suddenly, some people, some groups appeared on among the people, and they tried to make it violent. And they were those trained people because they were very familiar how to set fire to cars, for example, to ambulances, to fire trucks, to buses, to buildings, to banks, to mosques. And suddenly there were guns and other arms that appeared among the population. And they encouraged people, they used actually the protesters to encourage them and to go to the some places, like for example military bases and police stations, and to raid into those places. And that was actually the beginning of the conflict. And they tried to destroy everything. They tried to kill people, and they used guns, and they used knives, they used swords and other things, the blades and such things, to kill as many people as they could. and they try. There are footages, and I'm quite sure that you and your visitors have seen the footages that show that people are shooting at military stations or police bases and police stations. On Thursday night, security forces were not allowed to shoot live bullets. They had plastic bullets, they had sprays, but they did not have any order or any permission to use live bullets. So the only thing that happened was those police stations or military bases that the people were raiding, and so it's military place, and nowhere in the world is allowed to be attacked, and they defended themselves. So in other areas of the city, whatever that has happened about shooting, it has not been from the security forces. What happened was that people, the protesters, the real protesters, witnessed this violence and this terrorism on Thursday night. And on the second night, on Friday night, January 9th, what happened was that all those protesters tried to distance themselves. They stayed at home, and the number of the people on Friday night and Saturday night was much, much lower than Thursday. So these were the terrorist groups. These were the rioters who remained in the street, and they tried to make more violence and try to kill more people. And they officially and literally they attacked different places and set fire to different places to let's say make a coup in the country.
Okay. So let me translate for the public. Allora, innanzitutto scusate, una cosa che sta commentando Pasquale, e allora Antonello interrompi ogni tanto il tuo ospite, un po' di cortesia quando dite le cose, anche quando le chiedete, mi raccomando, lo dico sempre con il giusto garbo. A chi pure sta condannando, rispondi mia sorella. Noi sentiamo, dopo poi intervenite e parlate e dite quello che pensate. Ecco, solo questo. Allora, la sua analisi qual è? Che alla fine di dicembre sono entrate, cioè sono cominciate delle proteste, soprattutto a Teheran, per problemi economici principalmente, e ci sono stati scioperi, ci sono state serrate anche nel bazar di Teheran e in molte città iraniane. Gli slogan erano essenzialmente per una questione economica, cioè per la richiesta di un cambio, che ovviamente la situazione economica voi sapete che è molto molto problematica, sia per le sanzioni sia sicuramente per una cattiva gestione, insomma, della cosa pubblica, questo sicuramente. Cosa è avvenuto? Che dopo una prima fase in cui queste manifestazioni sono state di carattere principalmente pacifico, a inizio gennaio c'è stata una svolta molto radicale. Cioè il professore attribuisce all'appello che l'erede dello Shah Pahlavi ha scritto, fece anche in un tweet in cui invitava la gente a scendere in piazza per rovesciare il regime. Questa era una cosa, vuol dire, non è un'opinione, questo, se voi andate a ricercare su X trovate questa dichiarazione. E gli stessi Stati Uniti e Israele vogliono, il 3 gennaio, fanno una dichiarazione in questo senso, di sostenere queste rivolte. I manifestanti in tutto il paese si calcolano in 300-400 mila in tutto il paese, quindi insomma un numero molto consistente. All'improvviso, questo diciamo il carattere delle manifestazioni, avviene a una svolta in modo radicale, perché cominciano ad esserci intanto delle persone in grado anche di, fare la guerriglia urbana, quindi che hanno sicuramente ricevuto un addestramento, e nel giro di pochi giorni vengono assaltate moschee, ospedali e anche appunto altri edifici governativi. Il professore sostiene che in realtà le forze di polizia non abbiano usato live bullets, cioè proiettili diciamo in grado di uccidere. Resta il fatto che le vittime sono migliaia, e che quindi io questo ero partito dalla domanda, dal fatto che la guida, mi pare stessa, se non sbaglio ieri e oggi, ha parlato di un tentativo fallito di colpo di Stato. Io invito tutti a scrivere commenti, però non interrompete, cioè voi certo non crederete che io mi fermi per rispondere a voi. Insomma, quindi lasciate le vostre indicazioni, commenti, ma insomma sempre in tono civile, mi raccomando. So, Professor Gholamzadeh, third question, economic problems, we said. It's just a matter of sanctions, or there's something else and more serious?
To be honest, no, it's not only the sanctions. Throughout the history, especially before the Islamic Revolution, our economy has been oil dependent, and everything was set on oil revenue, and it was actually just the revenue and income from the selling crude oil. No refineries, no extra charges, no extra benefits from the oil. It was only selling crude oil. And economy has been based on that. And before the revolution, during Pahlavi dynasty, what we had was a total dependence on foreign markets and foreign intervention in our economy. So because of that, we did not have development in our country. Because of that, we did not have industry in our country. And we did not have technology in our country. After the revolution, Iran tried to become independent. And it has done a lot to cut this dependence on oil revenues and to be less dependent on that and more working on sustainable sources of income. But it is very difficult because we can say our economy is addicted to oil revenues, and it has not been able to fix itself yet totally. Of course, now that we are speaking from 100 dependence on oil economy, oil income, we are now almost half dependent. We have made refineries. We are selling oil products, not only crude oil. And we have tried to make other sources of income as well, like, for example, agriculture, like industry, like knowledge-based products, medicine, and such things. But it is still needs to go on, and it is not enough. So because of the sanctions, we are not right now. Let's put it this way: right now, we can make money, but the most suffering that we are tolerating from the sanctions is that we cannot transact the money. We cannot move the money from outside to inside the country or from inside to outside the country. We cannot easily trade with other countries. We can make the money, but we cannot bring the money. We cannot earn the money the way normally countries can do. Or, for example, as you may know, sanctions on food and medicine is illegal according to the international law. But many Europeans and the Americans are not selling us food or medicine because they say, you are Iran, we cannot transact money with you. And since we cannot send money or receive money from Iranian sources, so we cannot sell medicine to you. So drugs and medicine is practically under sanction for Iran. Yes, Americans are not sanctioning them, but they are practically doing that, and they are depriving Iranians from access to medicine, for example. So that's the main challenge with the sanctions. We cannot transfer money easily.
Allora, io avevo chiesto... No, please.
Just concluding this part. The main problem is that we are still moving from the oil dependence to sustainable sources of income. And this procedure needs time and needs, of course, management. I cannot say that the whole management of Iran is totally correct. No, we have our challenges. We have our mismanagements. Sometimes we have bad officials. Sometimes we have good. Sometimes we have bad officials. All in all, I can say part of the challenge is for mismanagement and part of that is for the sanctions.
Allora, avevo chiesto al professore, la crisi economica, la cattiva situazione dell'economia iraniana è solo una questione di sanzioni? Cioè siamo sicuri che dipenda solo dalle sanzioni? Il professore ha fatto una lunga disquisizione, cioè su come l'economia iraniana sia sempre in sostanza dipesa dall'esportazione di greggio, in particolare durante l'epoca Pahlavi, quando infatti allo sviluppo economico e all'export record del greggio iraniano non corrispose uno sviluppo per esempio delle raffinerie. Lui rivendica come un risultato positivo che dopo la rivoluzione la Repubblica Islamica ha cercato di una via di rendersi indipendente a questo, diciamo, questo doppio filo, diciamo, a questo nodo, no? dal petrolio, di dipendere dal petrolio. E sostiene che oggi questa dipendenza è ridotta della metà, cioè oggi l'economia iraniana dipende soltanto per metà dall'export del greggio, mentre in passato è stata molto più dipendente. Questo è avvenuto sia con uno sviluppo tecnologico, sia diciamo con una tendenza diversa a creare una diversificazione dell'economia. Però, e qui c'è diciamo una conclusione, qui ovviamente io concludo un po', cerco di sintetizzare l'intervento del professore, anche perché credo che molti capiscano l'inglese. C'è una difficoltà molto importante data per esempio dalle sanzioni, che cioè anche l'export di petrolio, poi ci sono problemi ad incassare il denaro. Questo è per via appunto della difficoltà del sistema bancario a far entrare i proventi in Iran. Ricorda anche che le sanzioni, quelle per esempio sui farmaci, sono dal punto di vista del diritto internazionale sarebbero illegali. La vera sfida è però un'altra, quella di eliminare, correggere la cattiva gestione della cosa pubblica, il cattivo management dell'economia iraniana. Quindi questo io credo che sia un dato molto molto interessante. Rispondo ancora a chi sta cercando, qualcuno che dice leggi i commenti. Io non leggo nulla, ragazzi, cioè i commenti sono lì per starci, gli altri li leggono, ma io ovviamente non mi posso mettere a rispondere a tutti. Avete la libertà e il diritto di scrivere, come chi segue la diretta ha il diritto di non essere disturbato. Se la diretta non vi piace potete andare a vedere qualcosa di meglio, insomma, fare qualche altra cosa. So we have the fourth question. Tension with the USA, tension with the Trump administration. How's the situation right now? I mean, right today, at this moment?
With sanctions, we don't have much challenges. Whatever sanctions they impose against Iran, we don't have much challenge because they have done everything and nothing more than could happen for Iran. So, it has been for the past several years. Even during the first administration of President Trump, they imposed the maximum pressure campaign against us. And it did not have any impacts on Iranian economy because they have already done everything. And I remember John Bolton at the final days of Trump's first administration, he said that the maximum pressure campaign has failed. And he admitted that actually. So the sanctions are no challenge. The threats, again, not that challenge. Iran does not like to have war, but it is ready for war. And it was the message that this morning was given by the Supreme Leader, that if there is any attack against Iran, it would not be a limited war, it would be a regional war, and it would include the whole region. And that's the message that the Americans have received, and that's why they stepped back. They brought their Navy fleets and the military devices and instruments to the region to frighten Iran, to bully Iran. But they failed to do so because Iran has been very serious in its defensive capabilities and has prepared itself for the past 4 decades to be ready to defend itself against such attacks. So the Americans and the Israelis try to bring Iran to its knees and to make Iran collapse in June and during those 12-day wars. And what happened was that they were the side that asked for ceasefire, the Americans and the Israelis. And they had this miscalculation that if they attack, the people would go to the streets and then there would be a collapse of the regime. Then they reversed their calculation. We help people go to the streets, and then we go attack and support them, and then would be a regime change. Both of them failed. In June and in January, both of them failed. And the Americans have now realized that neither attacks nor coups would not be able to topple the government in Iran. So what we need to do, the Iranian side is trying to do, is to let the Americans, let President Trump realize that bullying is not working for Iran. It might work for the others, but Iran is not a country that could be bullied into some outcome, some decisions. So that's the message that the Americans have realized and received. Iran is not going to bow down to pressure. If they want to have discussion, they can have discussion. And to my news, to the understanding of me, they have accepted Iranian terms for a possible negotiation. It could be indirect negotiations only and only about nuclear issue, and it would not include zero enrichment. So that's the latest that I could say about the discussions that have been, the message that have been conveyed between different parties, Iran, Russia, Turkey, Qatar, and other countries in the region. The messages, all in all, we can say has been such an agreement.
Allora, il professore sostiene che tutto è cominciato con ricorderete, la politica di massima pressione, quella di Trump qualche anno fa, che evidentemente è fallita, cioè la Repubblica Islamica non è caduta e questo lo sappiamo, cioè nonostante un'ondata di sanzioni che erano state gravi come mai prima, perché avvenivano dopo il fallimento e il ritiro unilaterale degli Stati Uniti dall'accordo sul nucleare del 2015. Poi continuano le minacce, cioè le minacce ci sono state, che ci sono ancora oggi, che però, secondo il professore, non sono minacce credibili per l'Iran. Se l'Iran viene minacciato, comunque è pronto alla guerra. La guida ha detto, mi sembra proprio oggi, che se gli Stati Uniti attaccano l'Iran non sarà una guerra tra Iran e Stati Uniti, ma sarà una guerra regionale. E il professore sostiene che gli Stati Uniti stanno facendo un passo indietro, cioè che tra minacce, movimenti anche di truppe, di navi militari, effettivamente ci siano situazioni di stallo, in sostanza. Sostiene il professore sempre che Israele e Stati Uniti hanno provato 2 volte a rovesciare l'attuale sistema in Iran. Una è stata a giugno con la guerra dei 12 giorni, un'altra è stata a gennaio con una fallita insurrezione. Questo di fatto c'è stato. La guerra dei 12 giorni ricorda come alla fine ci fu un cessate il fuoco che di fatto fu una necessità per Israele. Il fallimento di in giugno e gennaio è la dimostrazione anche che bullizzare i paesi, cioè minacciare, fare la voce grossa con l'Iran non serve, mentre magari è efficace con altri paesi. Il professore conclude dicendo che comunque il dialogo è sostenibile, sia possibile anche attraverso l'intermediazione di altri paesi come il Qatar, come la Turchia, a patto che ci siano dei termini chiari per il negoziato e che quindi una delle condizioni chieste sempre da Trump, cioè l'arricchimento zero, non è assolutamente accettabile per l'Iran. So, fifth question, is possibly now a different role of China and Russia in this crisis?
There are both two important players in world politics. And when 12-Day War happened, they were not sure about the destiny of the Islamic Republic, and especially Russia. They were not sure if Islamic Republic would survive the attacks in June. And so they hesitated to help Iran at the beginning. But later on, after a few days, when they realized that everything would be stable and Iran is going to handle the situation, they tried to make some help. Of course, the Chinese were more involved, and they helped more with some equipment. But there is one important point in between, that if anything happens to Iran, not only Russia, not only China, but also the whole region would suffer from the consequences. Because Iran is in a very strategic position. It has access to, it has oil, it has control over the Strait of Hormuz. Its ally in Yemen is in control of the Strait of Bab al-Mandab in the Red Sea. And of course, it is very key player in the security of this region, the Middle East or West Asia. And if the tension is increased here in this region, it would impact oil industry and oil prices globally. It would impact the trade routes in Persian Gulf and the Red Sea, and it would increase the rates and prices across the world because of the oil prices mainly, and of course the transferring routes, the sea routes would be longer, and security would not be in place. When security is not in place, only air routes from east to west, only land lines from land routes from east to west, all of them were cut. We would be cut, and the trade from the east of the world to the west of the world, from Asia to Europe and Africa, would be affected negatively. So they have realized that this region, especially Iran as the most important player in the region, needs to survive. And if it does not survive, the impact would be for everyone. So let's talk about oil again. The highest number of the highest volume of oil reserves belongs to Venezuela, and the United States has almost acquired access and control over the Venezuelan oil. And it says that I am the one who decides for the oil industry of Venezuela. The same way that they have treated Iraq for since the early years of this century. After collapse of Saddam, they have control over Iraq and Iraq economy, and the oil that Iraq sells, the income, the revenue goes to American banks, and it is the American president who allows the Iraqi president to have access to its own money, and they can decide for the Iraqi people how to spend their money and how much they are allowed to spend. So with such a control over Iraq, with such a control over Venezuela, two important oil producers, and with close relations with Saudi Arabia, Americans are trying to have control over the main part of the oil industry. And that is a serious threat for China, which is the largest oil consumer and oil importer in the world. So this challenge, it would be very serious. If Americans want to have control over only oil market, and they don't allow Iran to sell oil, then the first victim would be China. And they need to beg Americans to allow them to buy some oil. So that is the most important point. And we know that this trade war, this technological warfare between China and the United States is very strategic. It's not just about oil, it is about other minerals as well. So again, the microchips, that is one of the most important parts of the challenge between China and the United States, is very important. And Venezuela, again, has a good amount of rare materials. Again, Americans have access to that. Africa is part of that challenge as well. Afghanistan was part of that challenge as well. So Americans are trying to seize the opportunities and seize the places that have access and have reserves of these rare materials to challenge the Chinese, who are close to Taiwan, which is the main producer of microchips and semiconductors in the world, and it is easier for the Chinese to acquire actually capture Taiwan rather than Americans. So in this challenge, Iran is very important, and security of Iran and security of West Asia is very important because it is the trade route, and the Chinese in their trade war against the United States need this region. The Russians also need this region as well, because it is the easiest and the fastest route to the open seas and to the Indian Ocean would be through Iran. And if it is not stable, if it is not secure, the Russians cannot have access to the ocean either. So it is important for them as well. If Iran collapses, one of the key players in the world politics and one of the key allies of the Russia would collapse, and the Russians would lose that partner. Let's remember a few years ago when the war in Ukraine, the conflict in Ukraine was going on. The Russians used Iranian drones to change the calculations. Of course, Iran did not sell those drones in support of the Russian operations in Ukraine. The purchase was long before the Ukraine war began. It was in 2020 and before the 2022 that the fight erupted in Ukraine. But they used this, and it was Iranian technology that helped them. And it was Iranian technology and Iranian security that controlled and fought against terrorism in the region. If Iran had not fought ISIS in Syria, now Russians would be fighting them in their own land. Turkey would be fighting them in their own land. Iraq would have collapsed so far. And now many countries in the Europe and in Eastern Iran would be placing and homing and housing the displaced people and refugees, and security was totally unstable in this region. So this is the reason that Iran is very important to Russia, to China, and of course to the rest of the region.
Ora avevo chiesto al professore quale possibile ruolo di Cina e Russia in questa crisi. E diciamo il suo, trovo molto interessante questa prima parte della sua risposta, cioè che Russia e Cina all'inizio della guerra dei 12 giorni, diciamo, sono rimaste molto, come dire, molto sulla soglia a guardare quello che succedeva. Soprattutto la Russia non era convinta che la Repubblica Islamica sarebbe sopravvissuta all'attacco di Israele. La Cina invece era più coinvolta soprattutto con la fornitura di armamenti e tecnologia. Il punto è, cioè, se succede qualcosa all'Iran, cioè se cade la Repubblica Islamica, le conseguenze sarebbero non soltanto per il popolo iraniano e per l'Iran, ma per tutto il mondo, e spiega perché. Innanzitutto per la questione dell'export del petrolio, perché il prezzo del petrolio del greggio salirebbe, andrebbe alle stelle, perché lo stretto di Hormuz, quello da cui passano tutte le, sapete, le petroliere, buona parte dei petrolieri, quello che conduce fuori dal Golfo Persico, tutto questo traffico potrebbe essere chiuso, e ugualmente avverrebbe nello Yemen per quanto riguarda il Mar Rosso con gli alleati dell'Iran, e questo sarebbe una conseguenza molto molto seria per l'economia mondiale. Non sarebbe d'altra parte garantita la sicurezza a livello internazionale. Pensate soltanto a tutte le volte che sono stati chiusi lo spazio aereo, no, in questi mesi. Poi, in un certo senso, sostiene che l'Iran deve sopravvivere anche per la Cina e la Russia, e spiega il perché. Gli Stati Uniti hanno deciso di controllare, no, il petrolio del Venezuela, come fecero per quello iracheno, in cui di fatto la vendita, l'export del petrolio iracheno venne direttamente poi amministrato dagli Stati Uniti. Teniamo presente che la Cina è il più grande acquirente e consumatore di petrolio al mondo, e che quindi sarebbe la prima vittima di una crisi di questo tipo, della caduta della Repubblica Islamica. Parla poi appunto della questione tecnologica, c'è una questione relativa alle terre rare, che sono essenziali per i microchip, per tutta la tecnologia, che è una sfida che oramai è molto importante, e ricorda anche, questo concludo, insomma, un po' sintetizzando, cioè riguardo anche le grandi vie del commercio che sarebbero messe a rischio, e ricordava come la Russia nella guerra in Ucraina ha usato droni iraniani comprati prima del 2022, quindi non in regime, insomma, quelli di sanzioni per la guerra, ma che comunque questo dimostra che l'Iran ha una tecnologia in grado anche di combattere, di combattere e quindi di resistere. E ricorda anche che l'Iran ha usato questa forza militare per combattere il terrorismo dell'ISIS in Siria. Se non l'avesse fatto sarebbe stato un problema sia per la Russia, sia per la Turchia e sia per gli stessi paesi europei, che sicuramente avrebbero poi avuto fenomeni di terrorismo e ondate di rifugiati. Allora, 6 questions, just very simple. Friends and enemies of Iran. Amici e nemici dell'Iran.
France?
And enemies. Which are friends and enemies of Iran?
Difficult question. Anyone who respects Iranian sovereignty is a friend. Anyone who wants Iran independent, indefensible, and let's say unstable, they are enemies. So at the top of them is the United States. And the second is the minor part of the United States, which is the Israeli regime. The other countries, I would not say that we don't have many enemies, but we have countries who are mistakenly considering Iran an enemy, and they are treating Iran as an enemy, like European Troika, France, Germany, and of course the United Kingdom. They are acting as an enemy of Iran because throughout the history, as you all know better than me, these Europeans have been colonizers, and they used to have that. The British had that empire that in which sun did not set throughout the day, and they have access all around the world, and they never could actually colonize Iran. They never could control Iran totally, and they could not capture Iran. And they are not ready to understand that other countries can have power, can be independent, and can be sovereign. That, let's say, Eurocentric vision, in which Europeans are better than the others and more important than the others, or in George Orwell's words, or Europeans are more equal than the others, that mindset still remains in their mind.
I can't hear you. I no more can hear you. I can hear your voice. Allora, approfitto di questo problema tecnico, si fa per dire, per tradurre fino a qua, no? Chi è amico e nemico dell'Iran? La risposta è stata: chi rispetta la sovranità dell'Iran è chiaramente un amico. Tutti quei paesi che non la rispettano, a cominciare da Stati Uniti e Israele, ovviamente sono nemici. Poi ci sono paesi che invece erroneamente ritengono l'Iran nemico, ritengono una minaccia. Oh, so, please. Okay, please.
Sorry, I lost the videos. We're going on? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was saying, the Americans and the European Troika, not the whole Europeans, of course, the Troika, the British, the French, and the German, of course, the officials, I'm talking, not the people, they are considering themselves more important than the others, and they are very Eurocentric, they are supremacist, and they think that they are better and they can decide for the others. And they are the top leaders of the liberalism and capitalism, and they cannot tolerate a country which says that I have my own system of governance, and I don't believe in either liberalism or communism in the time of the Islamic Revolution. It was actually the Cold War, and we had bipolar world. And the motto of Iran at the early days of revolution was neither East nor West, the Islamic Republic. That was actually the motto that people chanted on the streets 47 years ago. So if they accept Iran as it is and as a sovereign state, Iran is not considering them an enemy. And Israel is not accepted and recognized by Iran because basically it is based on occupied land, and it could never be accepted as a country and accepted as a friend because it is totally based on occupation and usurpation. So it's not acceptable to Iran because people are displaced and people are killed, as we have witnessed for the past 2 years, the genocide in Gaza. So if we want to say friends, any country who respects Iran as a sovereign country is a friend to Iran.
Riprendendo appunto quello che stavo dicendo prima, che diceva il professore, diceva appunto quelli che sono paesi che appunto non rispettano la sovranità dell'Iran, e questi altri paesi, lui fa riferimento soprattutto agli Stati Uniti, alla troica dell'Unione Europea, cioè Francia, Gran Bretagna e Germania, che amano decidere per gli altri, cioè si considerano, lui cita Orwell, più uguali degli altri, e che quindi in questa visione eurocentrica, basata anche su una visione totale del liberalismo come sistema di governo dei paesi, non tollerano realtà che siano alternative a questo sistema. Lui ricorda che nella rivoluzione del 1979 diciamo, i manifestanti nelle strade dicevano né est né ovest Repubblica Islamica. Allora eravamo nel piano della guerra fredda, e quindi questo significava che lo scopo della rivoluzione era anche creare un sistema terzo, un sistema come dire, che fosse alternativo a quei due tipi di sistema economico e politico. Conclude parlando di Israele. Lui dice che l'Iran non lo potrà mai riconoscere in quanto un regime occupante e autore di un genocidio. Il riferimento a Gaza è evidente. Siamo alle battute conclusive. Other two questions. I'd like to give you two questions. First, how do you see the future of the Islamic Republic after Khamenei? Chiedo come vede il futuro della Repubblica Islamica dopo Khamenei.
The Islamic Revolution happened in 1979, and Imam Khomeini, the first leader of Iran, demised in 1989, and it was almost a decade after that. And at that time, I was about 8-9 years old, and I remember that it was discussed that because in the final years, Imam Khomeini was sick, and it was clear that because of the age, he is going to demise very soon. And everyone was concerned about that. What would happen after Imam Khomeini? And they said it was discussed in many places, in media, in analysis, that if he passes away, then there would be riots in the country, there would be collapse of the regime, there would be war and such things. But nothing happened. Nothing happened because everything was considered in the constitution. According to the constitution, we have assembly of experts elected by the people by public vote, and this assembly of experts is responsible for observing the performance of the leader and choosing the next leader. And they gather, they have meetings every 6 months. Every half a year, they have one in winter and one in summer. Usually, they have this gathering. And every 6 months, one of the agenda in their gatherings, discussing all the situations in the country and everything that they need to discuss, one of the agenda is to discuss secretly who has the potential to replace the leader if anything happens to him. So every 6 years, they consider the substitute replacement for the leader if anything happens, God forbid. So if anything happens, then the procedure would go on. The assembly of experts gathers, and now we have online situation and we have online facilities, and it could be done quickly online, and they discuss the options and then they vote for that, and very quickly the next leader would be appointed. And based on who the next person would be, something might change, but not everything would change, because Iran is a well-established country. It has its own constitution, it has its own regulations, it has its own rules and laws, and everything would work like clockwork, and it's not going to have a sudden change in anything. We have army, we have IRGC, we have security forces, we have ministries and the government, we have three branches of power, the executive, the judiciary, and the parliament, and everything would go on. Just remember the other year that when President Raisi had that incident, and he was martyred in the helicopter crash. So what happened? Very easily and very smoothly, we moved toward the election, and then we had interim government, then election, and then we elected the next president, and now we are working with the President Pezeshkian. So everything is just like any other normal country. We have our regulations, and we follow the guidelines, and then would be the continuation of the country.
Bene, allora il professore ha delineato un quadro molto chiaro, cioè ricordava la rivoluzione del 1979 e la guida era appunto Khomeini. Quando Khomeini morì gli ultimi mesi era già molto malato, quindi si sapeva che avrebbe avuto poco tempo, morì a 89 anni nel 1989. Per molti mesi, gli ultimi mesi di Khomeini, c'era questo timore, cioè che cosa succederà, ci saranno disordini, collasserà la Repubblica Islamica, eccetera, eccetera. E invece non andò così, nel senso che la Costituzione, poi definita negli anni precedenti, semplicemente definì il fatto che l'Assemblea degli esperti scelse poi il successore, e questo è quello che è previsto tuttora. L'Assemblea degli esperti, che io ricordo è un'assemblea composta da 88 membri, poi chi volesse approfondire, ci sono sempre i miei corsi online. È un'assemblea degli esperti che ogni 6 mesi si incontra e discute anche su l'eventuale successore, in questo caso di Khamenei. Il professore fa anche, dice una cosa interessante qui tra le righe, nel senso che qualcosa potrebbe cambiare, ma non cambierà tutto. Ecco, cioè c'è una possibilità di un cambiamento interno anche dal punto di vista costituzionale, ma non prevede cambiamenti drastici. Fa l'esempio anche di quando morì il presidente Raisi, ricorderete nel 2023, se non sbaglio, un incidente, nel 2024, morì incidente di un elicottero, e lì la sostituzione fu molto veloce e naturale, vennero indette nuove elezioni e venne eletto l'attuale presidente Pezeshkian. So we arrive at the very last questions, and there's a question that I thought about this morning when I saw a video with members of Iranian parliament wearing IRGC uniforms, chanting slogans against Israel and the United States. So my question is that we are looking for this is a joke, but for a Islamic Republic, less Islamic and more near the Pasdaran. Cioè, ho chiesto al professore, ho visto un video stamattina con i membri del Parlamento tutti vestiti con l'uniforme dei Pasdaran, che scandivano slogan contro lo sionismo di Israele. Questo è un segnale che vedremo una repubblica, meno islamica e più vicina invece ai Pasdaran, ai militari?
So you said less Islamic and more military?
Yes, this was a very crude image, member of parliament all dressed in IRGC.
It was a form of supporting the IRGC, saying that only sections of the government, the executive branch, the parliament and the legislative branch, the judiciary, and the army and security, the armed forces, All of them are together and united. This was actually a act of support for the IRGC. It doesn't mean that they are changing the politics and changing everything. As I said, every branch has its own power, and they are working together, just like the balance of power that we have in the United States, in Italy, in France, every part of the world. And they are supporting one another. The Europeans and the European Union is doing a great mistake, because it was the IRGC who was the key player in fight against terrorism in our region. Even when the Americans went to Afghanistan to attack Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, it was Iran who helped them, because they were stuck there and they could not proceed in the attack, and it was Iran who supported them. When they came to Iraq, it was Iran who helped them to proceed with changing the government after the collapse of Saddam, and to make some establishment and to make some stability in Iraq. And when ISIS was, quote unquote, deliberately created by the Americans in order to weaken Assad's government and Iraq, in Syria and Iraq, it was Americans who created, and it was something that Mike Flynn admitted, that Hillary Clinton had admitted that. It was Iran who fought against these terrorists. Iran was the key player in fight against ISIS terrorism in Syria and in Iraq. And that's why we have stability in this region. Who supported Jolani in Syria? He was on the top 3 figures of the terrorist groups. Mr. Jolani, who is now renamed as Ahmad Ashar, rebranded as Ahmad Ashar, and the Europeans and the Americans are supporting him, and they are meeting with him. He was the top leader of the terrorists. He was in Al Qaeda and ISIS, not only in one of them, both of them. And now they are working with him. Why? Because they want to weaken Iran. So that is the grave mistake, because in the future, the same terrorists in Syria or in other places that now the Europeans and the Americans are supporting, they would turn back and they would backfire and they would make insecurity inside the Europe. And the player who was fighting these terrorists was IRGC. And they did not respect that. They did not recognize all the efforts that Iran has done. Iran has had many martyrs in fight against these terrorists. Iran has given a lot of martyrs in fight against drug, actually, and drug smuggling. And if it's not the IRGC and the Iranian security forces, many drug would be smuggled into Europe, and then they need to stand against this addiction in their own country, and all the social problems and all the economic problems that it would bring to the Europeans. So Europeans make a great mistake, and the Iranian officials are showing their support for the IRGC to tell the world that they are playing a wrong game. They are accusing a wrong person for terrorism.
Allora, questa è l'ultima domanda, avevo chiesto al professore, oggi ho visto questo video, forse sta andando ancora, ma intanto traduco, ho visto questo video di alcuni parlamentari, anzi dei parlamentari iraniani, compreso il presidente Ghalibaf, lo speaker Ghalibaf, che cantavano, appunto, scandivano slogan contro Israele e Stati Uniti, indossando la divisa verde dei Pasdaran. Allora, la battuta che avevo fatto è: siamo vicini a una trasformazione, diciamo, dire, un paese un po' meno islamico, ma più vicino ai Pasdaran. Un'ipotesi che spesso si fa qui, no? Un paese più governato più dai militari che dalla politica o dai religiosi. E lui ha detto di no, sostanzialmente, che cioè questa era una forma di sostegno ai Pasdaran, ricordando che, come in ogni paese, anche in Iran, ogni branca ha i suoi poteri e le sue responsabilità, e l'Unione Europea, qui volevo arrivare, ha fatto un grande errore a includere i Pasdaran nella lista delle formazioni terroristiche. Ricordiamo voto suggerito dal nostro ministro degli esteri italiani, perché il professore ha ricordato che i Pasdaran hanno combattuto contro l'ISIS in Siria, hanno aiutato gli Stati Uniti a combattere i talebani in Afghanistan, hanno aiutato gli Stati Uniti ancora a dare una stabilità all'Iraq dopo la caduta di Saddam Hussein, e mentre invece molte di queste formazioni terroristiche sono state create proprio dagli Stati Uniti. E invece l'Iran è stato un elemento chiave per la lotta a questi fenomeni. E dice appunto il signor Giolani, che adesso è l'attuale presidente nuovo della Siria, un uomo nuovo su cui hanno puntato anche gli americani, è stato membro sia di Al-Qaeda sia dell'ISIS, adesso è diventato invece un leader credibile. Queste scelte, queste posizioni dell'Unione Europea sono un grande errore per il futuro, perché permettendo questo tipo di sconfinamenti, anche il crescere di questi fenomeni, e impedendo la lotta al terrorismo e al narcotraffico, potrebbero trovare questi problemi presto dentro casa. So, Professor Gholamzadeh, thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate your participation, your spoke and your words. Hope all the best for you and for your country. Keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to join the program, and it was an honor for me. Have a good day, and all the blessing for you as well.
Bene, allora intanto saluto tutti, ringrazio tutte le persone che hanno partecipato, opinioni anche discordanti. Io vi chiedo, vi faccio sempre ricordo una cosa: su tutti gli altri posti potete leggere le stesse solite cose, qui magari potete ascoltare anche una voce che invece non sentirete mai sicuramente sui canali tradizionali. Con questo vi saluto, ci vediamo presto con le nostre trasmissioni. Buona serata a tutti.